We now want to get to our first topic, which is the economy. A recent poll from the Pew Research Center found the economy is the top issue for voters in this election. Inflation has driven up prices on everything from food to housing to transportation. So what would you do to ensure that families in Eastern Washington can afford to live here? Mr. Baumgartner, you have 1:30.
Well, thank you. Inflation is an absolute critical issue. Anybody that goes to the grocery store, especially when you have a young family, you know, the price of groceries now versus 4 years ago is just astounding. And I hear it all the time, and I see it at the treasurer's office. You know, regularly I'll have senior citizens come in to my office that feel like they can't make their property tax payments and that the government is just asking so much of them. So to bring those costs down, what we need to do, first and foremost, is rein in the reckless government spending that has pushed costs up and contributed to inflation. And we also really need to look at the regulatory burden that government policies are having on things like owning a home or starting a small business. You know, here in the state of Washington, nearly $150,000 in the cost of a new home construction is simply because from government regulation, primarily in the environmental, labor, and building code areas. And so government can do a lot of things just to bring prices down. And one of the things I'm hopeful for when we get to Congress, we'll really take a scalpel to the regulatory state and try to bring down some of those government-imposed policies that are costing folks at home so much.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Conroy, you have 1:30.
Thank you. We've really got two economies going on. We've got record profits for corporations in the United States. We've got record stock market highs. But for the majority of people, they just can't afford housing and childcare and even things as simple as food. So there are a couple of things we can do. Part of it is that the Fed is doing its job to try to bring interest rates down in order to help bring inflation down. But the government could be doing more. We know that one of the reasons that there are record-breaking profits is because corporations took advantage of supply chain interruptions and felt like they could charge people extra just because they wouldn't notice and they wouldn't blame the corporations. So breaking up monopolies, making sure that there isn't too much market power that companies can abuse in order to extract extra profits from people. We can also crack down on tax cheats and funding the IRS enforcement arm. We know every dollar that goes to IRS enforcement comes back in $12 to the U.S. Treasury. So we definitely need to address those costs. Restoring the child care tax credit would be one way that we could do that so that working families trying to get their kids through school can use that money to make things a little bit easier to pay the bills.
All right, thank you. And we will now move on to our first follow-up question, again related to the economy. And as a reminder, candidates will have 1 minute to answer these follow-up questions. In our region, healthcare and education are two main drivers of the economy. So if elected, how would you diversify and support job growth? Mr. Baumgartner, you have 1 minute.
Well, it's a great question. You know, one of the favorite things I worked on in the state Senate was regarding health care, and we did it in a bipartisan fashion, Republicans and Democrats working together. And that was to bring a new medical school here to Spokane. You know, there was a really stupid 100-year-old law that gave the University of Washington a monopoly on medical education. The UW didn't want to give up that monopoly, but I remember meeting with WSU President Elson Floyd down at Churchill Steakhouse when he asked me to quarterback the WSU Med School bill, and we whipped him in Olympia like the Cougs just whipped the Huskies in the Apple Cup, and got a medical school. In fact, we have 2 medical schools now here in Spokane, and that's great because we need doctors. We need more access to rural medicine. And so if I get to Congress, I'll continue to support those medical schools so that everyone can have a doctor that needs one here in Eastern Washington.
All right, Ms. Conroy, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Healthcare and education are two huge fields that we have out here, and we've actually got plenty of jobs for people. The healthcare industry complains that they can't get enough folks out here. So the medical school, the nursing school, the pharmacy school, all those things help. We've also got Affordable Care Act money that's coming in that's making behavioral health care more available and affordable to people. But we need to do more to make sure that rural folks and veterans have access to the health care that they need. So making sure that the medical record system at the VA hospital here in Spokane and in Walla Walla is replaced with a system that doesn't kill our vets, and making sure that we've got flexibility in our rural clinics, which are being overwhelmed, especially by women and girls seeking health care from neighboring Idaho.